What's up, internet land? Facebook, Women's Liberation Movement. Good to see you, ladies. We've got a special guest today for this live broadcast. I was talking way too much when we came on and saying silly things, as you know that I often do. And that's why when we came on, we had our guest giggling. She's laughing with us and not at us, okay? So I wanted to bring Kim on, Kim Vopni, who's a specialist in sort of pelvic health dysfunction and function for women. The self-dubbed Vagina Coach is here today to share with us. And I want to set up the reason why I brought Kim in, or why I begged and pleaded for her to come on and talk to us. I did an informal poll on my Instagram and here on Facebook several weeks ago, and just asking women about pelvic floor health, pelvic floor dysfunction, when you were introduced to it, have you ever heard of it? And 65% or better of the responses that I got, and Kim, this was out of about 300 plus women. I don't think any men answered, but you never know because we're men.
Men have pelvic floors too.
Right, exactly. But about 65% or better just weren't aware that there were even people who should speak with you about this generally, and even more probably problematic from my perspective is I've got all these moms that I work with, Kim, and they had never heard a lot of this terminology: post-delivery, post-C-section, et cetera, et cetera. So you're here today. So let's just get this thing cooking, because I know most people will come back and watch on the replay. If you could just introduce yourself and tell us what you do exactly, Kim.
Yeah, I get that question all the time. What is a vagina coach? First of all, thank you very much for having me and for all the work that you're doing to help promote the topic of pelvic health, because it's really underserved and not a lot of people talk about it. But what I do, how it started really was I was afraid of childbirth, and I grew up thinking there's no way I'm going to have kids because I knew my mom had struggles. And when I did grow up, decided I did want to start a family, I was really determined to have a different story. And I was fortunate to have found a device called the Epino, which is a biofeedback device manufactured in Germany that helps prepare the pelvic floor for birth. And I used this, I had a great experience. And then I said, how is it that not everybody knows about this product? And I contacted the company and said, hey, could I be a distributor? And it was actually not supposed to be a business at the time. I just thought it would be a little, side money kind of thing. And anyway, fast forward 2009, I was laid off from my job. And I said, all right, let's see if I can turn this into more of a robust business. And I started a website. I had a bunch of pelvic health products that people could purchase through. I had a Shopify store. I started doing some programs. I started a program called Prepare to Push. And that was really to help pregnant women. So I started taking the principle of specificity from fitness and applying it to pregnancy and birth, because I looked at that as being an event that should be trained for like we would train for any other event. And within that training, we needed to talk about the pelvic floor. So that's how it started, was really, I became this preacher of pelvic health, and I recognized a huge void within the fitness industry. So I had been a personal trainer in the past, and I got out of it for a little while. And then I recertified, focused on pre-postnatal, and did everything I possibly could to learn about the pelvic floor, and then was starting to create programs for people, and then eventually certification courses for professionals to help ensure that this topic was talked about and brought into conversations, especially about fitness, because the pelvic floor is a group of muscles, and like any other muscles in our body, they require movement, they require range of motion movement, they require slow twitch, fast twitch, they require recovery. It's the same principles. And when the muscles aren't working optimally, we can run into issues. And because it's taboo, so many people don't talk about it. So it's kind of a coaching business, really. It started with product, it evolved. I started a second business called Bellies Inc. to optimize postpartum recoveries. And now what I do is I have online coaching like this. I have online programs that people can do. I'm also launching an app in a couple of weeks called the Buff Muff app. And I am just, whoever will listen to me talk about pelvic floor, I will talk about it. And my desire is really to help. There's too many people suffering in silence.
Absolutely. I can 100% validate that whoever will listen to Kim about pelvic floor, she will share with you. I know that from our interactions in clubhouse rooms. And, full transparency, I don't know Kim as well as some of the other colleagues that I bring in here, but I know her level of expertise. That was good enough for me. We've had probably 5 to 6 real-time interactions, but over the course of that time, what I've been able to discern is that she's, number one, she's passionate about what she's doing. Number two, probably just as important, if not more than number one, she's very knowledgeable about what she's doing. And number three, which is always interesting for me because of how I come to understand the patriarchy overall, right? She's very keen on interrupting things that have been pushed into the dark back corner of the closet, the taboo, which leads me to my next question, which isn't really a science question, but I just want to know, how did you come up with the term vagina coach? Did somebody give that to you, or you said, I'm going to kick in the door in the most disruptive way possible? It's going to make men squeal when I say vagina. Like
women too.
And some women too, quite honestly. How did you come sort of you do?
So initially, when I first started, again, I was working primarily with pregnant women, and there's quite a popular practice now that pregnant women will use midwives and doulas. And doulas are support. They're kind of like coaches for birth. So they don't actually help with birthing like a midwife would or a doctor would, but they are sort of your coach along the way. And a lot of what I was doing was coaching. And yes, I was a fitness professional, excuse me, but I recognized the value in learning more about birth as well. So I trained as a doula, and my brand or handle at the time was fitness doula. And that was for a number of years. And even when we were working in Bellies Inc., our primary audience was pregnant women or people, and also postpartum. So new parents, new moms. And then as my business partners and myself were also now going through different life stages, we were in perimenopause, now menopause. And we were then having people come to us saying, well, I gave birth 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and now I'm reaching menopause, or I never have given birth and now I'm reaching this point in my life and I have some issues. Can you help me? And so I recognized that the conversation really, pelvic health is across all life stages, and fitness doula wasn't really resonating with the menopause and perimenopause group. And so I knew I needed to find a different term that was a bit more, a little broader. And I was speaking at a conference, and there's an organization in Toronto. It's rebranded now, but at the time it was called the Mompreneur Organization. And they had a national conference. I was invited to speak because I had written a blog that said how optimizing your pelvic health can make you a better mompreneur. So I came up on stage to present my talk, and all the people who had been presenting up to that point were some sort of a business coach, marketing coach, strategy, whatever. And so I just joked and came on stage and said, well, you now have a vagina coach for your business. And it was meant to be just a joke, but it was like this light bulb. And I said, that's what it is. And it's also, it captures it, but it also, nobody likes to say the word vagina. It's one of the most hated words. And so everybody always, and I use slang terms too as well. But I also use and embrace, obviously, vagina coach, I use it. But we want to pay attention to this part of the body. We want to get comfortable saying a proper anatomical term. And so I just said, all right, here we go. I put out a poll on my Instagram and people loved it. And it was like a, TSN turning point, and it changed the game.
Yeah, I mean, but isn't that the kind of language we need in the industry though? Like, yeah. Don't we need to confront things that have been swept in dark corner? And from my perspective, you never run into these issues with men, right? The Viagra, Cialis, ass man, left and right, all day long. The word penis, for God's sakes, I see it 1,000 times per day in my inbox, but we've shuttered everything about the anatomy of a woman. There's a disparity between just research. Most of your standard fitness research, probably 70% of it is done on 25 to 55-year-old males, right? Yeah. Yep. So I love so much. First of all, a great story. I love the story. And the fact that you came up with that on the spot as you were approaching the stage pretty much makes you my new best friend. But second, it's like, for real. But second, I love that you carry that title and people have to think about, internalize, say the word out loud, because there's nothing weird about it. So I'm going to get off of that subject because we got some actual information for the people who are here listening. And what I wanted to do right here, Kim, is I've often used the phrase common but not normal, right?
Yeah.
Some things in life are common, particularly in the physical realm and wellness. Some things are common that are not necessarily normal, but they're so common, we apply some normalcy to it. And I wanted to know, could you give us some common dysfunctions from your experience, your background, your expertise that women are enduring that are common, but they think that are normal? Can you touch on that a little bit for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I say that saying all the time. And I would say the biggest one is stress urinary incontinence. So that would be where you leak urine when you do a double under, or when you lift a heavy weight, or you're skipping rope, or you're laughing, coughing, sneezing. When you exert some sort of effort and a little bit of urine leaks out, that would be considered stress urinary incontinence. Some people call it peasing. Some people call it sneeze pee. Some people call it light bladder leakage. Like, there's all sorts of other terms, but at the end of the day, it's a type of incontinence. And a lot of people hear the word incontinence and they think, oh, well, that's just for people in old folks' homes, and it's not happening to me. I don't have incontinence. But if urine is coming out of your body when you are not sitting on the toilet wanting it to come out of you, that is incontinence. And it happens to young athletes. It happens to people who've never given birth. It happens to everybody, men included, at a very, it's not nowhere near as common in men. And that's a lot in part to do because we have a different shape of our pelvis. We have an additional opening. We have a uterus. We can grow and birth babies, and that puts us at an additional risk. So that would be the number one, I would say, is stress urinary incontinence. There's also urgency and frequency. So the people who say, oh, I have a small bladder. Oh, I have a sensitive bladder. Or, oh, I feel like I have to go to the bathroom all the time. Or sometimes I feel like I can't make it to the bathroom in time. That's also a sign that something may not be working optimally. So if you're going more than every 2.5 to 4 hours, that would be considered the normal window. People sometimes say I go every half an hour, I go every 20 minutes. That's not normal. It's a signal. So that would be frequency. There's also urgency, where this is something called the key in the door syndrome, where you're fine, but as you're getting closer to home, your bladder is starting to get like, woohoo, we're getting close. And then you put the key in the door, and they call it the key in the door syndrome. And all of a sudden your bladder's like, hallelujah, we're home. And it wants to completely let go sometimes. And obviously then people start to plan things around their bladder. So that would be urgency, urge incontinence. That's kind of on the incontinence realm. You can also have anal incontinence. So gas or stool can leak out, which very life altering, I would say. So, peasing and stress urinary incontinence, we've been told even from media, we just put the pad in and we carry on. No, we can treat it, but the pad can be a temporary measure while you're seeking treatment if you need it. And then we have prolapse, and prolapse is where the bladder, the uterus, or the rectum, there are, the urethra, the intestines even, but the most common, bladder, uterus, rectum, shift out of their optimal position, and they can bulge into or descend into the vagina in the case of the uterus. And statistically, it's actually more common than incontinence. But it is something that is absolutely not screened for, not talked about at all. We don't see messages, on media about prolapse, and so many people are suffering with it. And the piece with that is it can be uncomfortable, but it's also it influences our mental health so much. And a lot of people, especially with prolapse, are not exercising. They stop having sex. They stop going to social outings. They feel like they're broken. It really, really has a negative impact on the self-esteem. And I think if we had better screening in place, none of these, not to say they wouldn't ever happen, they're going to happen, but I think they would happen less often. And when they do, we wouldn't be hiding away. We would know exactly what to do and who to go see to get help.
I have to come right back around to the comparison of erectile dysfunction and how quickly men will go to a doctor or a specialist for any, and it's welcomed and it's normal. And
Yep.
Men talk about it. I'm a man, and I can assure you that we do. How much in this for the audience? This question wasn't on the books, but I just want to dive into this. How significant is the taboo in restricting the treatment? From your perspective, how is the lack of normalcy of the conversation impacting women? Is that a big deal from your perspective, or is it
Huge
not?
deal.
Right.
Yeah, huge deal. So we even have research that women will wait on average 6.5 to 7 years
My
before
God.
getting help. And to your point, men would wait 6.5 to 7 seconds.
Minutes,
if something
maybe.
was wrong with their penis, they would be like, okay, what do I need to do? They would find the person, and they would probably, they wouldn't have to search around. Because the other thing, I couldn't get approved on Facebook for a long time because vagina was an inappropriate word. A lot of my posts are taken down off Instagram. I have to code name them because vagina is inappropriate, and that's part of the problem. And so we can't get the right information out there for people to be aware. And then even when it is, right now, the first line of defense that people think about is their doctor. And while we need the medical community on our team, I think we need a healthcare team, I always say, or healthcare village. I don't believe they're our best first line of defense. And so when we go down the medical route first, the allopathic system is fantastic when we need drugs and surgery, which can absolutely be life-changing for so many people. And we are so fortunate to have them. But so often there's this whole other realm of things and options and solutions for people that they are just not even told about. So I think there's a huge barrier to information. And I think that I would also like more collaboration between the care providers, so that it's, even if you do go to a medical provider, they are then also referring on to, I say always my best first line of defense is pelvic floor physical therapy. So I think it's a huge, huge barrier. And I wish the conversation would actually start when we are teaching kids about menstrual health, sexual health, body aware, like all the topics we talk about when we're introducing all of that, the sexual wellness stuff. How about we introduce that this is the pelvic floor, and it's an incredibly important group of muscles, especially if you're female. Here's how you take care of them. Here's how you do Kegel exercises. Here's what you need to know from a pregnancy birth perspective. Here's what you need to know for menopause, because 100% of you are going to go through menopause. And here are the professionals that can help you.
Absolutely. I often speak about switching out the or for an and, right? Should I go to the doctor, or should I go see someone who's a pelvic? And, should I hire a nutrition coach, or should I go to therapy? And, right? If you have the means, one thing that I know I can agree with Kim on is that if you have the means, the building of a healthcare network, we have a tendency to lean on medical doctors very heavily for a plethora of things, but they don't have the time. They're already going to school 7, 8, 10 years. Let's start there. Even with that amount of schooling, they don't have the time to become a nutritional expert also. A pelvic floor expert also, an expert in, rehabilitation for injuries also. And it's okay to advocate on your own behalf and say, well, I've heard of a pelvic physiotherapist, Dr. Blankety Blank. Is there any way that you could progress me to that stage? I understand this is outside of your wheelhouse. And for the medical professionals, because I have a few in this group, and a few that I train, it's equally okay for you to say, this is outside of the wheelhouse of what I do as a general practitioner. However, I know a pelvic physiotherapist, and I know a young lady, we call it a Vagina Coach. We're going to pass you through that network in a way that you can get the best intervention for you, because I can't solve this medically here. Instead of what we're getting, which is what I understand, Kim, is just there's no conversation.
And there's a lot of people, unfortunately, who, and in the defense of the medical system, as you said, huge amount of schooling to know a lot of information, and the way that the system is set up. So I am in Canada, in this system, which is, there's similarities to the US, but the medical providers have not much time, like 7 to 10 minutes is kind of what you're allotted for an appointment, right? And so there's signs all over saying you can address one topic while you're here. And then, so unless you book, 5 appointments in a row, which they won't even let you do,
right.
you can't ask the questions. You can't really truly become informed. And they have to rule out all of kind of like the more sinister type things within that time frame. So it's not set up to support wellness. It's set up, if we have an urgent issue that we need medical attention, it's perfect. And we are incredibly lucky to have it. It's not set up for proactive wellness and management of things that require a bit of a lot more information, really.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, to echo Kim's point, we're not disparaging the medical community. We just understand and realize that they have some limitations for layered reasons. They have limitations. So that's why everybody's going to go follow you right after this live broadcast as number one. I always want to give some type of actionable information for an audience, especially when we're presenting a subject that they really don't have a lot of information about up front. Some might, but most don't. From your perspective, and I know, we're not tapping you for full anything like, but what people can do exercise-wise, because I know that's depending on very specific circumstances. What are some actual items for at least for them seeking out some intervention? Like, what's step one for a person who thinks something feels not quite right? Or I've had leakage for quite a bit of time. I thought it was just what happens after you have children. Now that I know, what can I seek out here? What are your thoughts there, Kim?
So always my number one thing is see a pelvic floor physical therapist, which I just talked about. And you can go to Google and put in pelvic floor physical therapy in your city or town or wherever you are in the world. You can look at American Physical Therapy Association, Canadian Physical Therapy Association. You can go to pelvicguru.com. They have a fairly global directory of pelvic health practitioners. So those are a couple of starting points. Depending on your insurance or your medical, like your health plan, sometimes you might need a referral from a doctor. But so often you can book and pay privately and go privately. So if there's one thing you take away, please go do that. I think it's the most underused women's health resource that we have. I always say that, from a young age, we've been told to brush our teeth twice a day, floss, and go see the dentist once or twice a week. Once or twice a year. And if we had that same PR for our pelvic floor, and we were told at a young age to do Kegel exercises and see a pelvic floor physical therapist once we become sexually active for our entire life, once a year at least, we would be in a position to screen for things like prolapse, incontinence, catch them when they're early, catch them before they even start. So that would always be number one. The other thing is on my YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and put in Vagina Coach, you'll find my channel. And I have a bunch of different playlists of certain things, one of which is a Kegel exercise playlist. So many people have probably heard the term Kegel or Kegel. And Dr. Kegel was recognizing in his patients, this is back in the 1940s, that his clients who'd given birth were having a harder time contracting and relaxing their pelvic floor. So he used a biofeedback device called a perineometer to help them connect with those muscles so they could see when they contracted and relaxed. And that's what essentially became a Kegel exercise. What has happened, and this is part because fitness gets harder and more intense every single year. And so people see the Kegel and they've been told that they should do it. And they say, okay, I've got to squeeze my vagina. And they squeeze as hard as they possibly can. But a Kegel is much more than just a squeeze. There's a lift component, but there's also a let go. Just like I don't just do this at the gym all day to train my biceps. I have to go through a range of motion, just like my pelvic floor does. So when you can understand and appreciate that, then you'll learn how to do a Kegel exercise correctly, and then you can apply it to movement. So my approach with pelvic floor training is Kegels it's a form of pelvic floor exercise, and it's a great place to start to be able to connect to your pelvic floor and understand the relationship of the pelvic floor with the breath. So I have a video called The Core Breath. I highly recommend you watch that because it walks you through different imagery and different cues you could use. Start there. Once you've been able to understand that, then and do it, you start to then add it to a thing, like start, say, with a bridge or a pelvic tilt or even a squat, even a bicep curl. Anytime you're working out and doing exercise, you can add in your core breath. So you think about when we exhale with exertion, that's a very common way to exercise. We can exhale, add the pelvic floor cue, and then do our bicep curl or then do our push-up or whatever it is. And that trains the pelvic floor to respond and react appropriately. It needs to pre-contract just before you push. Sometimes, people will say, well, every time I do a jump squat, I leak. Okay, well, if we can bring that back a little, let's connect with the pelvic floor. Let's start to add it into a regular squat with the appropriate timing, and then start to add a little bit of intensity with adding in the pre-contraction before a jump squat. We're retraining that pelvic floor to respond to pre-contraction just before we exert a force. So that's a really important piece. So I would start with the core breath. And if you don't have access to a pelvic floor physiotherapist, you have 1 and 2 fingers right here. And this might seem weird, but you can self-assess if you're doing a Kegel correctly. So, of course, I have to bring up my props.
Of course.
Here's a vulva puppet. And if you have a finger, you can insert it into your vagina. So this is the vulva, labia majora, labia minora inside. The tube inside is the vagina. So you can insert 1 finger. And a common cue, the most commonly favored cue, is imagine picking up a blueberry with your vagina and your anus. So vagina is here and the anus would be down here. So if you could imagine that there's a little blueberry and I'm going to grab it, I'm going to squeeze, and then I'm going to lift it up, and then I'm going to put it back down. That's the movement that we're looking for within the pelvic floor. That's what you do. And you see, okay, when I imagine that blueberry, did I feel a hug on my finger? Do I feel like there's not like sucking it right up and in, but is there a gentle draw up? And then did I feel that I could let that go? A lot of people have harder time actually letting go. A lot of people are already overactive. It's called a hypertonic pelvic floor. Some people may have been told that their pelvic floor is too tight. And a lot of people also think that they need a tight pelvic floor, that they need a tight vagina, right?
Right.
And just as if we had really tight traps, or if we had really tight abs, or if we had anything too tight is not strong. And if we can then learn to relax first, then we can take it through its range of motion of picking up a blueberry and putting it back down. But some people have to focus a lot on that releasing and letting go of tension first, and then come back to this. So you could test it yourself. If you have access to physio, that's always my number 1. Mm-hmm. And the last thing that I would say is pay attention to your diet. So there are so many people in the world who are constipated, and constipation is a huge danger, really. It's really detrimental to the pelvic floor. If we are chronically straining every single day, sometimes multiple times a day, that pressure goes downwards. It increases our risk of prolapse. It can increase and worsen already existing prolapse or incontinence. And sometimes constipation is actually because of those non-relaxing pelvic floor muscles. So it's kind of this, chicken and the egg thing. Mm-hmm. See a pelvic floor physio to understand what your pelvic floor is needing more of. It's not just, everybody doesn't need more Kegels. Everybody doesn't need a PeriFit biofeedback device or Kegel weights. If you're already non-relaxing, those are actually going to exacerbate the issue. So see a professional who can help you understand what your pelvic floor needs and what your symptoms are telling you. And then you'll know what your plan of attack is, or your solutions would be.
I love that. We've got a few comments that have been going on as we've gone through the live session. I'm going to bring some of those up, but I also want to sort of reiterate what you just said about the balance of the musculature in the pelvis, right? Because for you brilliant dynamic ladies out there listening now, you obviously know that your body's not supposed to be in a state of contraction indefinitely, right? Yeah. Whether, and I love the example of your traps, right? Because we all get that we shouldn't be tight in the shoulders all the time. Yeah. But to your point, we get a lot of casual information that talks about tightening the vagina only.
Yes.
It's all you ever see or hear about. but that's not the case. There's a balance that we need to strike there. So, to some of those comments, we've got Facebook users. Oh, that's the Be Live thing. We've got Facebook users because they have to give permission. But one of our users here said that they didn't realize that prolapse was so common. I didn't either. I never would have thought, and I've had 2 clients that have had it. Within this previous year, I've had my first 2 clients ever that had some pelvic floor dysfunction. So I was doing my research as well, but I had no idea that it was more common actually than the incontinence, which is amazing to me. Thank you so much for sharing that.
I just want to say one thing on that. You've probably had clients along the way that have had pelvic floor dysfunction. You just didn't know it.
Absolutely.
And so the statistic with prolapse is 50%. 50% of women have some degree of prolapse. And that's, again, you don't have to have given birth. That increases the likelihood. 50%. So 1 in 2 people, right? I've experienced prolapse. It's so common. It's so common.
That's you touched on another great topic. For a man who works with women, I'm sure because of the taboo that's already pre-installed in the subject matter, I'm sure I've not heard more than I've heard from my clients without question. And I'm gonna circle around to a final question about that I think you can help me with, and probably the viewing audience as I share these. But the listener here said that her gynecologist, hormone specialist, gives crappy nutrition advice for medical weight loss. Absolutely, medical professionals. Again, we're not demonizing, and there are some in here today, and I coach quite a few medical doctors, one of which is a gynecologist, actually. But it's not that they want to misinform. It's not that they're trying to be malicious. It's just when you introduce corporations into medicine, you get quotas that they have to meet, time constraints, and they just don't have the time to dive into all those things. But thank you for sharing your comment. And this other listener said that they experienced prolapse after their 3rd child. Another great nugget that you gave us. I didn't realize how common it could be in the absence of childbirth. So that's where my knowledge was limited. I would have assumed that someone could not experience it, although it does make a lot of sense as you intermingle the possibility of constipation into the conversation. I could see how much more detrimental that could be to a woman's pelvic health than a man's, possibly, which is very, very interesting. And I think that's all of our commentary. So here's my final question, and then we'll let you go. We're about 2 minutes over this time, I promise you. My question is for the coaches out there. How can we? Is there language that we can use to check in as a new coach? When I started, I had my first experience with someone who had to go back and forth to the bathroom, primarily because of pelvic floor dysfunction, and coupled with my misunderstanding about programming and how I could invite that with the jump squats. Always the jump squats, with jump squats, right? And this person was, I want to say brave, but I feel like that's disrespectful. This person was upfront enough and direct enough to have a conversation with her male coach and say, hey, look, I don't know if you know this, but sometimes women have a little leakage. And when you're programming exercises like that, they're fairly impactful. It can make it really easy for it to happen. Now, at that time, I didn't have the wherewithal or the knowledge to say, oh, you may want to see a pelvic floor. But how as coaches, is it possible for us to at least make space for the conversation? And if so, what's your advisement there? And for the other side, for the potential client, if they have the direct enough nature to address, how would they address it? Can you sort of give us your thoughts on both sides of that relationship?
Yeah, I love that you're ending with this question. And I have a certification course for professionals who work with women, and it was designed initially for fitness, but it could be for chiropractors or massage therapists, anybody who is in the position of working with women, female anatomy owners, and has a screening process. And a big chunk of the course is the screening and assessment within our scope, because we're not doing internal evaluations. We aren't medical providers, but this person has come to us. They've entrusted us to help them with their body. We should be asking questions about their bodies. And when we can ask questions about, I just wrote a post a few days ago called Pee and Poo Should Be Vital Signs. And I think that we need more screening around things like that. And because we can learn so much when we ask a question. How many times a day do you go to the washroom? Or if you've noticed once you start training somebody that they go before every workout, or they might excuse themselves in a workout, or they might tell you that they don't like this exercise or what have you. How many times do you go pee? How many times do you go poo? Do you ever notice that a little bit of urine leaks out? Do you ever struggle with constipation? Do you ever feel like something's kind of falling out of your vagina? And if we ask in a way where we just own it, how many times a day do you pee? Do you ever leak? And instead of going, I know this is going to be embarrassing, it feels a little bit awkward, but and we get, if we approach it that way, that's going to make the person feel uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. But if we own it and talk about it like I'm asking you about, what are your fitness goals? One of your fitness goals, probably unconsciously, is I don't want to leak when I do jump squats.
Right.
And if we can say, hey, I can help you with this. I can program movements to actually improve those symptoms that you're struggling with. They're going to be your client for life.
Right.
So I think from a coach perspective, we have to get the knowledge to know what questions to ask, and then ask them with confidence and with the knowledge that when the person, because they're most likely going to say, you know what, I actually, is that a problem? I didn't know that was a problem. Or they might say, you can help me with that. And sometimes there are people that won't say it right off the bat, but as you start to notice signs or start to program and they start to notice an improvement, or they gain your trust or what have you, then they'll start to open up a little bit later. Mm-hmm. So get the understanding, get the knowledge that you need to know what questions to ask, and then ask them confidently, make them part of your screening. There's a whole plethora of questions that we can ask that we aren't going to cure, but we then can say, hey, you know what? Have you ever seen a pelvic floor physical therapist? Or we can say, now, this is a little bit different from a male perspective. Not all men can say, yeah, I gave birth and I had this, but right. They could say, my wife experienced this, or Absolutely. My sister or girlfriend. And me as a trainer, I can say, you know what, that happened to me. I experienced a uterine prolapse. I have experienced stress incontinence. I've experienced a rectocele. And so then you become relatable.
Right.
On the the client side, yes, I can appreciate it that there are sometimes in those initial meetings where you might be a little bit hesitant to share that information. What I think social media, though, has done has opened up the awareness of a lot of people struggling with a lot of things we have had no idea about. And right. What that has allowed for is people to feel like they're not alone, and to know that there are options out there and there are solutions. So I think more people are recognizing that we have this whole body and there are lots of things that people can help with. And so the more open we can be about things we might be struggling with, the more likely I am going to be able to achieve the goals that I have. And so I would invite people to just answer honestly, answer openly. Do not accept that light bladder leakage is just part of being a woman. Do not accept pads as your destiny. Suffering in silence is I'm not interested in suffering. And I invite the same. I want the same for all of you. Do not suffer. You don't have to suffer there. And some people choose, but if you are informed and you choose to suffer, that's totally up to you. Right. But I want the other people to be informed and know that there are options as well.
I love that. For the folks in the group listening, I asked Canada to send its best and brightest, and Canada sent me Kim today. And I think you see why. That needed to be said, Kim. I've called all of Kim. I've been calling Canada nonstop for weeks. I said, please send me your best. And Kim showed up. It is what it is. Kim Vopni, thank you so much for sharing the information that you did in your transparent and compassionate way that you do, if not enthusiastic. There's just a certain amount of enthusiasm with which you go through the subject matter, and it's so refreshing. And I want to continue to team up with you to normalize these things for the amazing women that we both have privileged to serve. so that we can get these issues out of the dark where they do not belong, and allow people to understand the normalcy of it, because isolation makes almost any physical situation worse.
Yes.
When you
1000%.
think it's just you, there's something wrong with you that never serves humanity. We're all down here on the rock together, so that we can share our experiences and protect each other in a certain sense. And for some products and some corporations and some people, that's not profitable. To hell with those people. We're going to interact with you in the ways that you need to be interacted with. Kim, where can people find you if they need? Obviously, we're gonna link you out in this group, but where can people find you if they need to find you? And let's start here. What's the name of your course for the coaches that are in this room, the competent professionals? How do they get access to the course? And then, generally speaking, where can people find you?
Yeah, thank you. The certification course is called the Core Confidence Specialist Certification. If you work with pregnant women and people, there's an expanded version of that that's a pre-postnatal. So if you work with people who are pregnant or might be, I would do that one because it's the Core Confidence Plus Extra. And you can find both of those courses at vaginacoach.com. So that's my website where I have the professional courses. I also have consumer programs, and there's links to my coaching. There's links to my books there as well. Soon I'll be launching an app in the next couple of weeks, so that will be listed there too. And basically, if you go to social media or Google even and just put Vagina Coach, you'll find me on Pinterest and YouTube and Instagram and Facebook. Because we're on Facebook, people who are here, I have a private Facebook group called Box Talk, and it's a private community for a reason. It's a place to come and feel that you're not alone, to connect with other people, to ask questions, and to get some direction on some things that you might be struggling with that you don't have to announce on a public platform, because not everybody's comfortable with that. So so thank you, Ren, so much for having me. I so appreciate, I love sharing rooms with you on Clubhouse. I just have enjoyed the conversation so much and really appreciate all that you do. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you so much, Kim Vopni, Canadian genius, rock star, giver of life,
giver of Kegel,
and Avenger. She's officially an Avenger now. We'll see you guys next time here. I'll be back tomorrow to talk your heads off about something not as awesome about this. So you might want to come back, maybe not. Who knows? But Wednesday we'll have my friend Cassandra DeLynn Spencer will be here, the self-proclaimed Oprah of fitness. Cassandra is also and she's awesome. She's also an author. She's spent time in the bodybuilding realm, and she's going to talk to you guys about sort of accepting the current avatar, who you are now, and processing. Isn't that a cool topic? And processing what you do in a way that it works for your current personhood, not your 25-year-old self. So we'll dive into that another time. Kim, thanks so much. I'm going to disconnect. If you guys come back to the replay, feel free to ask questions underneath this video as it promotes. And either Kim will be here. She'll get an opportunity to see it. If we tag her, at the very least, I'll send those questions to her, link you guys up so you can get on her side of the internet and give her a following and ask those questions, enroll in some of her coursework, and get some help. And we'll see you guys next time. The next time we have a live session. Kim, thanks so much again. I'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, Ren.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.